Let's take the music label, for example. You find leaders, you find a
Yeah.
team. How do you take your big vision, your big ambition, and how do you break it down? What's that thought process like?
Wow. Um, I had a season of my life. I feel like these are all big questions. I had a season of my life where um, I, I was struggling with my not. I don't want to say with my faith. I think I would probably say with the outworking of my faith. I was
Mm.
struggling with the outworking of my faith. So I believed in Jesus, and it's actually everything that Zoe is talking about. Um, I had this big vision. I think people will identify with this. Vance, do you remember the season? And Zoe, I know you probably do as well. Where it was like conferences everywhere. I
Oh yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
leadership conferences and everywhere you went, it was like this, that, ah. And it was kind of before. It was definitely before the virtual conference season. It was conferences everywhere. And I remember going to all these conferences, and leaving the conference so excited. And, Louis Giglio would hop on stage and he would be like, you're, there's somebody in the audience. You're not just called to the church. You're called to start a movement. You know what I mean? Or you're called to go start a skateboarding thing. And you're called to go You're called to go revolutionize the tattoo industry, right? You just like all of these things.
Every sphere, every space.
Every space, yes. Yes, man. And I remember leaving those conferences going, what? Like, how do I do that? How am I going to start a movement? like, but like I had all this vision and they enlarged my capacity. They were enlarging my capacity, right? And now I'm up at 3 a.m. going, how am I going to start a tattoo movement, right? I mean, it's not technically a tattoo movement, but you get my point. And honestly, it led to a season of depression, because to be really honest,
Wow.
because I did not know how I was going to start a movement, but I kept hearing that a movement was in me.
Mm.
So I went on a journey of discovery. And like when you talk about the idea of like working out your faith and studying to show yourself approved and owning your own development, that's the season I went to, because I got to a point where I was like, man, I can't just keep hearing the big message and not knowing the practicality of the message.
Come on.
And it's impossible for me to know the practicality of the message from going to conferences and church every Sunday. I need
Wow.
someone to sit. So that's when I talk about mentorship, right? And this is where mentorship starts to get amazing. But that was one of it. I started to go on this journey of going, I need to find somebody who has done this well before. And I need to, and there were so many mentors at the time that I don't even remember who told me this for the first time. But I remember one person or a few people saying to me, you've got to learn how to go all the way to the end and then build backwards to the beginning. And that's the journey I started going on. And we call it, we had an organization at the time and a group of individuals that were like, we were running together. And it was kind of, it wasn't the mafia at all, the Christian mafia, but it was kind of like the mastermind groups now that you have, like early
Oh yeah.
on. And we crafted and coined a term called peak state. It's like, what is the peak state of your vision? What is the peak state of Overflow? What's the peak state of Story Church? What's the peak state of all of these different of Capital and Story Records and Story? What's like, where do we ultimately want to go? And we would get a whiteboard out. We would draw a picture of that. And then we would go, all right, now what do we need to do from there to get back to where we are now? And that helped me a lot with the practicality of the moment of going, okay, so if I want to go down the street, I got to take one step out of the house. Oh, no, the first thing I got to do, I got to get shoes. Right. And so it's like, let me get shoes. I got to get running. I got to get walking shoes. And then after my walking shoes, I got to take one step out of the house. And then, oh, I think I got to do 20 of those. I got to make sure I have some water for the journey. So that's my simple answer. We can go deeper if you want, but that's my
No, that
opening line.
it's brilliant, and I think it's insightful because another key word I heard from you is mentorship, right? And all throughout this podcast recording, I've heard you say Brad Lomenick or a Chick-fil-A-ism. It's clear, Andy Stanley. It's clear that you are a byproduct of a lot of the people that you've invited into your life to speak into your life. Paul says, "Follow me as I follow Christ." Why didn't Paul just say, "Follow Christ"? Right? Because we don't only need to follow Christ, right? We need to see people also pursuing Christ and what that looks like.
Yes.
And that's why
Yes.
he added that in. And so, yes, we follow Jesus directly, but also we need people in our world to show us what it looks like to follow Jesus.
Follow Jesus.
Yes, we can have an idea of business in our head, but at the same time, we need examples of people that have done it well. And that applies to every sphere and every space that we set our feet on.